Hi, my name is Dave Reske, CEO of Now Speed Marketing, and welcome to this edition of Marketing in the Now, where we talk about the best ideas in digital marketing. And my guest today is Matt Ranta, CMO and partner at Nimble Gravity. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate being here and excited to have this conversation with you.
That's great. Well, I really appreciate you joining. Just before we begin, tell me what Nimble Gravity is and what your role is there. Tell me about what is it all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Nimble Gravity is a data, AI, and engineering consultancy. And we help ambitious businesses grow, modernize, scale through applications of any of those three things and more. And we work across industries and across B2B, B2C, et cetera. So lots of fun stuff. As CMO, I do a lot of marketing work, but it's a small organization, so you wear a lot of hats, like you do at any startup. And so I also do things like due diligence projects and other things direct with clients. And on an individual level, I have over 25 years of operational growth experience in marketing, e-commerce, digital transformation, and now, of course, AI. And I've led digital marketplaces, global paid search programs, marketing organizations, and this is for companies like Arrow Electronics, Cricket Wireless, Ad Action, and now with Nimble Gravity. So that's me and us.
Wow, so much experience. I guess when you have like a background like yours, you bring a lot to the table, and I'm glad that you've taken the time to share that with some of our listeners today. So thank you for that.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I appreciate you asking me to be a guest.
sure. Well, you and I have been talking about AI, as many people around the globe have, and we've been talking about a book called A World Without Work and how that applies to marketing. And so our topic today is a world without marketing work. And I just want to ask you to start by, maybe sharing thoughts about how the book relates to marketing, or what do you really see happening with AI today, especially as it relates to marketing?
Yeah. So I think it's really interesting. I've, over the last couple of years, gotten hands-on experience, like a lot of us have, obviously, with AI workflows across content, analytics, automation, and obviously have some real-world examples of where that's failed, where it's augmented things, and where it's even replaced positions, unfortunately. So this book that we've been talking about, A World Without Work, tells the story of how kind of technology has always reshaped human labor. If you go back in time and think about the printing press, right, that displaced workers, and if you think about the cotton gin and things like that, did the same kind of thing. But there's always been this ability for humans to kind of move into new kinds of cognitive or creative jobs. And what's happening now is a little bit more interesting because AI isn't just another, physical tool that can help out with things. It can actually solve problems that require human-like thinking, or it can outperform us even in areas that we thought we were uniquely good at. So Susskind kind of goes into like two major forces essentially in this book, right? One of those is task displacement, like we mentioned just a second ago. And that's where AI is going to chip away at tasks inside of jobs until the entire job itself becomes potentially unnecessary. And then a capability revolution is probably the other area that he really gets into, where AI improves, scales, and works far faster than humans. And that doesn't mean this is like, a dire warning of a sudden robot takeover or anything. I'm not kind of talking about anything like that. I don't think he was either, but a gradual reduction in the amount of human labor that society needs. Some work is probably going to resist automation for economic, regulatory, ethical reasons, right? But overall, traditional work as we know it might shrink. And his argument is that we have to start planning now for a world where work plays a smaller role in our income, our identity, our purpose, et cetera. So I've got experience that has come across those different areas where it's been a augmenter for me where it's failed miserably, quite honestly, and even where it has succeeded. And so those are the forces that he talks about, that complementary force where AI amplifies human capability, or the replacement force, where it removes the need for a human to perform the task. And that's how economists kind of talk about it. They look at tasks within a job and those complementary or replacement forces. So
Wow, so many big ideas there. Maybe we'll start with
yeah,
the beginning, that premise that we need less work to get the same job done, and in maybe in jobs like marketing, we are used to the people doing all of those jobs. But in jobs like maybe agriculture or others that have been automated for a century, we're used to machines doing a lot of those jobs. I mean, one of the
right,
thoughts I had while you were talking was imagine the amount of labor that it would take to bring in the harvest in the United States without machines today. It would take
right.
astronomical. We don't have nearly the number of people that we would need to do all of the physical labor to weed and plant and bring
Yeah.
in all of that. So we're grateful to all of that automation. But you're right. It's this displacement in this other place where so is the same thing happening in marketing? Are we going to be just doing more now that we have machines to do part of it? So how does that kind of fit as I transition into thinking about intellectual jobs being displaced? Or maybe we should
Yeah.
actually, before you answer that, let's just take a
Okay.
step and say, like, what are the jobs that or the tasks that are could be or are being replaced in marketing or augmented in marketing today?
Oh, sure. Obviously, content generation is a huge one, right? And I think people um, both have found success there and have also found challenges there. If you're, deep in the field or even moderately touching it, I think you could relate to the fact that AI is M-dash happy in its context
Yep.
and writing and these kinds of things, and that there are triggers and clues that give things away pretty easily. And if you are um, an individual who maybe isn't as particular about reviewing things, you might let that slip, but it's a clear indication that AI was involved instead of actual humans, right? And that's writing. There's also the fact that audio can be created, right? So imagine backing music tracks for commercials or for online videos or whatever it might be. That doesn't necessarily have to come from a musician who's a human anymore, right? And so, in that sense, that could actually be a replacement, right? And you, as a marketer, might not have to go out to a marketplace that sells backing track or pull one off of a platform that you use for video creation or whatever it might be. They might already have them generated. They might be able to regenerate them for you in the platform, right? And so that's potentially something that is both augmenting one person's work, the person who's putting together the video, because they don't have to go out and figure that stuff out on their own and rely on another human, but it's also replacing tasks that a human at one point in time was doing. There are huge marketplaces where humans have contributed things like backing tracks and stock music and those kinds of things. Stock imagery is another one, right? And the ability to create that, the ability to edit photos. Photoshop now has capabilities where you can go in and do remove background. And I remember, decades ago that graphic artists were the ones that were doing that, right? Now you don't have to do that. You're making an individual graphic artist more productive because they gain back that speed, right? That they're able to then put towards something else potentially. I don't think that's replacing jobs in and of itself as a task, right? But it is happening slowly that those kinds of things are going on. And then you look at a platform like Nano Banana that can generate images out of prompts that are pretty darn good, right? And all of a sudden, do you need photographers? Do you need, these other kinds of people? And what do you notice inside of those images that might trigger you to say, yeah, those are AI created, and we as a business perhaps want to not have those be a part of our ethos and our ethic and our business, right? Maybe we want to support those folks who are artists and contributors to the world in that way. And those are the kinds of ethical decisions that organizations will have to make, but those are things that are replacing tasks in people's jobs and or augmenting them. I wouldn't say that a single one of those examples has put somebody out of work individually, possibly, but I don't think so at this point in time. Yeah.
So let's just talk about the quality of that first. So
Yeah.
do you think in those cases, and as a digital agency, we use AI all the time as well. So just like all of our clients do. So in some cases, I'm seeing quality be good enough to replace or augment, what we might be able to do with a individual employee, contractor, someone like that. But in many cases, the quality is not there, or it takes an expert to create something, and video is an example. We have not been able to just put a simple prompt in and get maybe an explainer video that's at a quality level. Maybe you have that could really do it. But I can imagine if you're an expert videographer, you could manipulate the prompts well enough to do it. Where are you seeing the quality be good enough to maybe replace the task that a human was doing? And where do you think it still has some ways to go? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, yeah. So since we're talking about video, I'll talk about one that I've used, and I agree with you. I haven't put in a prompt yet and had it spit out a whole, say, minute-long video where I like every single part of it and I don't go tweak it or something like that, right? However, there are parts of some of these platforms that do some really interesting things from a, say, editing perspective. One that I've used, and I'm not here to plug them, so I'm not going to say their name or anything like that. Maybe we can put it in the credits or whatever. But one that I've used does editing of longer videos down to clips. And so it takes a process that normally would take a videographer or a human a lot of time to kind of watch the video and, write down or mark in the video wherever, they're working. This is the spot where I want to start the clip, and this is the spot where I want to end it. And then, okay, now I've got 20 of these that I've done, and somebody has to go review them. And that took me a couple hours of my time. From a task perspective, the platform that I'm talking about is actually able to go in and do that editing and pull out interesting clips, right? Because it analyzes the transcript of the entire video and it looks into what's interesting and how, you know, people talk and where inflections and voices rise and these kinds of things. And it will go in and chunk out those clips. So that task is no longer something that I feel a videographer has to do or a junior marketer or whoever you might assign it to, right? That's something that you could rely on AI to do that would speed up that process for you. Does that mean that it can do the video up front? No. Does that mean that it's as good as a great professional crew that would come in and help out with your videos? Not at all, right? It just means that that little task has gotten replaced.
Yeah,
So,
and that leads you to think that other tasks could be as well. One of the areas that I often use AI is then once you have that video, like from this podcast, we can use it to then create a transcript, take the transcript and create maybe a derivative piece of content or multiple derivative piece of content, actually
right,
capture and synthesize those ideas into blog posts or social media posts or other things and get it out there. And again, that I think what that's done for us is it's not really replacing, I'm not laying anybody off because of that. What I'm doing is I'm creating more. I'm like,
right.
oh, now I can create 5 blog posts a week instead of zero point 0.5 blog posts a week. It's letting me like do 10x more. And so I don't know that maybe in marketing we always wanted to do all of this stuff, and now it finally gives us the ability to do more. Do you see that happening? Do you see people saying, "Oh, I can really cut my costs and lower my payroll by doing less or having less hours?" I don't know where do you see that
Yeah,
it could go
I
either way with it, I
think
suppose.
I think the way that I think about that is it allows people who are already good at a task to become substantially more productive, right? Like
Mm.
as you're saying, go from half of a blog to 5 blogs a week or whatever it might be that you're creating from a content perspective. But at the same time, that's also reliant on how well trained you have the systems that you're working in, or how deeply you've gone into API connections and trained things, and how trusting you are, and those kinds of things. So I think that there's probably a level of technicality, maybe, where individuals probably aren't going to feel very comfortable allowing for that kind of automation to increase their productivity because they have less control over the content. And they individually may not like that. They may not feel comfortable with it. I think other people will feel comfortable with it, and they'll think that this is good enough. And I think algorithms are going to move from maybe ranking content for things like, visits to things like running it through GPT-0 and seeing how human is this content, right? And maybe we get to a point where folks are demanding that there's some kind of rating on your content of was at least 75% human generated and we'll stamp a badge on it or something, right? Like maybe it goes to the point where it's like organic groceries, right? Is this really actually human content in some way, shape, or form?
Yeah.
But I do see it being more productive, and I see it allowing people to be running leaner organizations, but being as productive or more productive than they were and than their competitors are with the same quantity of people. That's kind of actually a replacement effect too, right? And the fact that you're able to become a more productive agency, but you aren't hiring another individual for that. So they're missing out on that opportunity. And we don't know who that single person is, or if it's a single person, maybe it's a quarter of a person, right? From a FTE standpoint, not to be callous. I don't think people think this way generally, but maybe that's enough that it doesn't trigger in an operational sense. I really have to hire somebody to scale this, right? Like I can get far enough that I don't have to hire anybody. I'm more profitable, but I've replaced at least a group of tasks that somebody could have been doing.
Yeah.
So
And
that's kind of the argument.
I think the anecdotal evidence that I've heard about, I've seen it, well, I'll tell you our experience in this in a second, but is really in the entry level job in marketing. So is
Mhm.
the entry level job going away? Is the intern going away? Because often in the past, what you might have asked an intern to do is, hey, watch this video, summarize it. You're a good writer. You went to, Harvard. You can write
Yeah,
up a summary, and then create a blog post, and I'll review it every step of the way, and and get your feedback on it. And then you can, write these derivative social media posts. And all of that work that used to take weeks with an intern, or
right.
days at least, right? Cycles of review, it now takes minutes. And so that there's that whole class of work. So I don't know. Do you see that kind of that entry level job going away in marketing, and where we can get all of those basic tasks done quickly and easily, and experts can do them directly?
Yeah, it's really interesting that you asked that question because I was thinking about it this morning, kind of preparing for this conversation. And that's an area that actually scares me as an individual, right? Because I think what'll happen, and it doesn't scare me as a person who, like, oh my gosh, my job's going to be taken away or whatever. It, the younger marketers, the other people coming into entry level roles and other jobs as well, those are the people who are most likely to probably get those tasks removed or have them become so efficient with AI that they're just monitoring a bunch of them, whatever it might be. And maybe they aren't really learning to pull the levers and to flex their creativity and to be able to strategize and to figure out the problems. And they're like the way that we mentor and coach younger generations is going to have to change. Or I think what'll happen is there'll be this gap where people who are already knowledgeable and productive workers who are at this moment in time right now using AI to enhance and augment their work will eventually retire from the workforce. And if we haven't trained other people to come up and fill those seats, regardless of how many there are or, what's going on in the world, then there's the potential that maybe AI can't completely replace the person who leaves the workforce, and the person who's coming into the workforce or has just recently isn't yet experienced enough to make things as productive as they could, right? And so there's this interesting knowledge gap that could happen because we're allowing for this augmentation to occur that makes us much more productive and much more expeditious in execution. So it's a really interesting question. It's a really interesting challenge. And I don't know a lot of organizations that have yet stumbled onto that and shifted the way that they're defining how they train those younger employees and why they want to bring them into the organization still. But I think we have to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's gonna be a major challenge going forward. One of the theories that I have is that um, junior marketers used to come in and they got all those basic tasks, write this social media post, write this article, write this web page, and they kind of were mentored, by more senior people, and they got all the, and then they got, after years, you kind of got up to these more senior levels. One of my theories is that schools and individuals are going to need to do a much better job at being more technical and much better trained to come into organizations where we thought the entry level is really now the mid level, where you've got to come in
Right.
knowing the workflows, knowing the systems, knowing the processes. You got to, and it's going to take, universities and other organizations to kind of bring people up to that level so they can enter in a productive piece when all of the basic jobs are gone. So I don't know how that's going to happen, but that's one of my theories. Let me
Yeah.
transition into another piece here, though, and in order for work really to go away in marketing, I think that the workflows need to be connected because I agree with you. Some of these tasks are um, are getting easier to do and be more automated. So I can get a blog post written, I can get an email written, I can get a social media post written, I can get graphics written, created, I can get maybe some basic video. I can get all these pieces done, right? If I have it, and I can get a strategy document put together. I can get competitive research done. I can get all these pieces done. But the workflow to kind of take that strategy and then turn it into great content and then have it actually executed in HubSpot, in Constant Contact, have it connect the dots from your ad system to your to from Google to and LinkedIn to your ads, and have it connected to your CRM system. All of those pieces, I'm not seeing the automation there yet. Are you seeing that? Are you kind of seeing the workflows come about, or will it require an entirely new class of systems that will work with AI that will make that happen? Or are humans still necessary to connect all those dots in marketing?
Yeah. So I've seen, I think, every possible outcome of that, at least right now. And maybe that's a grandiose statement. Maybe I haven't. Mm, But I've seen agentic systems that have pulled together numerous tasks, launched things, created outputs, sent them off to directories, depositories, whatever you might want to say, and that have the potential to replace humans. I've also seen those kinds of systems thrown out after, 6, 12 months worth of work on them because technology has caught up and what is being done by agents is now actually being done just in user interfaces from top uh, producers of AI products. I have seen what you're talking about, where you can automate the content creation, but you can't really get it to write a workflow in HubSpot. You can't get the orchestration right, like these kinds of things. And I've seen, one person become a department of five, and be able to do everything by themselves. And I think it really kind of depends on the size of your company and what you're trying to do and what you have the means to execute. Those early examples that I was talking about were done by companies that have very deep pockets. The middle, like I can't find something that'll orchestrate that. Like I'll hold my hand up and talk about that, right? Like we have tried at Nimble Gravity multiple times to do some orchestrated automation across campaigns, and there isn't a magic button that I can go push somewhere, right? Like I can't just say, "Hey, this platform is the key, go figure it out." I can string together three or four different things and write some custom code and be personally involved in watching it execute and make sure that it goes well. And then, gosh, here's that step where all the systems go, hey, I can't do this, I can't do that. You have to go in, Mr. Human or Mrs. Human, into the platform and put these secret keys into, or you have to paste this email in, or whatever it might be, right? And it falls apart. And the promise is not realized because yeah, it took away a whole bunch of time from maybe you creating the content, but now all of a sudden it's presenting you a technical problem that you have to go solve that wasn't a task that you as a marketer did in the past and nobody else in your organization can do. And all of a sudden it's like, well, that took me 3 hours and I could have just written the content and launched the campaign.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I have this, just related to that, I have this theory about robots at home. This will make sense hopefully in a second.
Yeah,
So if I brought a robot into my kitchen and had to train the robot to find the food where I put it in the cupboards and open my refrigerator and use the gas stove and then figure out how the garbage disposal works and train with the dishwasher, that's a very complicated robot. And we might not have that robot for 50 years. It's because it's got to be tall enough to be able to reach things and work like a human, right? But if I
yeah,
redesign the whole system and say, really, what am I trying to do here? I'm really trying to just have food prepared. I might re engineer the entire kitchen to look nothing like my current kitchen, but just to take inputs, put them together in certain ways with heat, with liquids, and produce edible things, right? So
yeah,
it might be that it's the startup that designs its marketing strategy around a video that is AI produced and graphics that are obviously AI produced is not trying to make, hey, make this video like all of our other,
right.
$10,000 produced videos, right? It's more like we're going to create a style and a strategy that's going to be what this technology can do at the time. So I don't know. That I just had an interesting thought. Like,
Yeah.
will it be that startup that leverages what is capable of doing now and uses the workflows that are available now that will leap ahead of where some more of our traditional marketers are in using AI?
Yeah, that's a super interesting thought too, because so Susskind kind of talks about this in the book, and he talks about like DeepSeek and DeepGo and like these kinds of platforms that have mastered chess and mastered the game Go, and they've done it on their own without studying necessarily human gameplay. And they've created their own solutions. They have their own style of gameplay,
Hmm.
right? And so that in and of itself is AI is solving a problem that humans have, but they're doing it in a way that humans wouldn't do, right? So they aren't trying to mimic our actions, our activities, our thought processes. They're creating their own. And so what you're talking about with the kitchen is maybe rather than having that kitchen be manned by a robot that we don't know how to make yet, that would have to be able to adjust its size, bend over, do all these kinds of things. Um, Maybe you redesign the entire kitchen, and it's really interesting. I had this conversation with a guy who's a farrier, somebody who replaces shoes on a horse. So I happen to have a horse in our family, and I'm out there watching it get new shoes put on, and he's talking about AI and robotics because he asked me what I did, and he's like, I can't even imagine a robot trying to shoe a horse, right? And it's the same kind of thing. I can't imagine a robot running my kitchen. Well, guess what? There's actually a company in Germany who has created an automated kitchen like you're talking about. It's like a Jetsons kitchen, basically. It doesn't have a humanoid robot in it. There are a bunch of arms, there's a bunch of drawers, all these kinds of things. You stock this kitchen and it can cook 120 meals an hour,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so that replaces the entire kitchen staff and it replaces the entire kitchen, right? Like it doesn't have the kitchen set up for humans to walk around in or whatever. It literally is this compact box that's like a freight car from a train or something, right? Or a shipping container that you would see on a boat, like that size. that contains everything you would need to run a restaurant with that kind of capacity for it. And it knows where everything's at in that kitchen because it's designed for that particular application, right? In this box, this is what we're going to do. Instead of putting the robot out in the wild, right, and saying, learn 1,000 different kitchens and figure them out, learn this one kitchen and we'll do that. And then you go, okay, well, who stocks the kitchen now? Is that a human job that you have to run that to? Maybe, like maybe not. I don't know. A truck could be programmed to at least drive the supplies to the kitchen, but getting the supplies off the truck into the kitchen, can that be handled in every scenario? I don't personally know.
Yeah,
And
that's
is there a machine in the future that can take a horse and flip it upside down and sedate it and put new shoes on it and turn it back over and send it on its merry way and it's stress-free for the horse? Well,
yeah.
maybe.
I think that kitchen example is powerful, like, because then you say, well, oh well, I would never be able to do my high-end restaurant like that. That's never going to replace it. But maybe people will say, wow, the end product, those 120 dishes that was make, I'd rather eat that than a meat at McDonald's, perhaps.
Right, right,
And for the cost and the quality, it's far better, or maybe not. But then they have to go to market and figure that out. And I think that's maybe the analogy for marketers is the same. Are we trying to wait for AI to be able to set up projects in Asana and then deliver them to HubSpot and making sure that it's connected to Salesforce and work with all the systems we've got and create videos at this level, or should we reimagine what we're doing so we can be 5 times more productive with the tools
it's
that
a
are
great
available
question.
today? Yeah.
It's a
and when
great
the, and
question.
then what does that do for jobs? The interesting thing in that world is that there may always be jobs for people who have to work with all the current systems, just like there's always going to be a job for the person shoeing the horse. He's got
Right.
lifelong, but there's a different industry around transportation with electric cars where it's a different function right now. So
Yeah, yeah. Right. So, and that's happened historically. Like people have shifted from becoming like, even we talked about graphic designers earlier. Can you imagine talking to people in the 1800s about graphic designers that worked on computers? Like they would, what are you talking about? I'm a web developer. I develop apps. What the heck is that? Right? Like those have always come along. It's just a moment in time where I think there's some pause from people about, is there the next thing, and what does that next thing look like, right? And
yeah,
I think
yeah,
we're finding out. So there's a framework that you could probably employ to get close to your question, which would just be like 4 questions every marketer should ask themselves about AI. Like, what can I stop doing? What's fully automatable right now? What can I do faster? What can become, like to your point of I can produce blogs faster, a hybrid workflow, right? That kind of thing. What can I do now that I couldn't? What's an augmented capability, right? Like, can you as an individual now code your website because you don't need a coder to do that? You can go ask ChatGPT to do it. It'll write the code while you do something else. You can come in and test it. You can say, no, it didn't work. Give me something else, right? Like what else can you do that you couldn't do before? And then what makes you uniquely human? Where does your judgment, your creativity, your ethics, these kinds of things as a marketer come into play? And how can you apply that to whatever those future jobs and tasks might look like? Yeah.
yeah. I think those are exactly the right question to ask. It just struck me that a lot of the jobs that we're afraid of being destroyed by AI are jobs that didn't exist 20 years ago. And will
Right.
100 years from now, we look back over 200 years and say, yeah, over 200 years, there was that brief period in the like 20 years where we had to code websites and do all these fancy marketing things, right? And, before that, we didn't do it in the 80s,
Yeah, yeah.
and
I mean, they used to put out newspapers, and somebody was individually moving letters around on a tablet, right, in order to
right.
get the press to print on it. And like
Movable
that's a
type.
silly job,
Yeah,
right?
but before that, they were hand copying manuscripts, right? They're like, yeah,
Right.
movable type. So, yeah,
Yeah.
so the progress will continue. Well, Matt, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much. If any of our listeners want to connect with you and learn more about you or Nimble Gravity or connect with you on this topic, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, so nimblegravity.com is our website. I've got an open LinkedIn. People can come and see me there. So obviously, I think everybody knows that Matt Ranta is my name, and then LinkedIn. So it's LinkedIn/in/Matt Ranta. That's really easy to get to.
Yeah, thanks again for taking the time. I really appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, you bet, Dave. Great time to be a guest. Thanks.